Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, today we're diving into the fascinating, kind of chaotic, and honestly bizarre history of the ubiquitous USPS mail truck. You know the exact one I'm talking about. We're going to unpack the story behind it, break down the data, and uncover exactly why this super familiar fixture of our neighborhoods is so terribly outdated. Literally everyone recognizes this iconic meal truck. It's the sworn enemy of your dog and the absolute best friend to that neighbor who orders like 500 Amazon packages a week. With nearly 260,000 USPS vehicles out on the road, the vast majority are this exact model, the Grumman LLV. But despite it being an absolute icon, folks in the know have accurately described it as, well, there's really no easy way to put this, a mega busted trash can on wheels. So it really begs the question, how did we get here? How did the government set out to build the absolute perfect mail truck and instead wind up with a fuel-guzzling beast that just randomly catches fire? It's a wild story full of engineering quirks, government bureaucracy, and totally changing times. Let's get into it.
Part 1, the 1980s Fleet of Freaks, or the Island of Misfit Mail Trucks.
See, right before the 1980s, the Postal Service was basically operating this insanely scrappy, ramshackle squad of repurposed vehicles. I mean, right after World War II, they literally just used leftover war jeeps. By the time the 80s rolls around, they had 169,000 vehicles just rotting away on the streets. It was an absolute mess. We're talking about 9 different types of jeeps with varying engines, Studebaker zip vans, and even full-blown tractor trailers. It was this hugely expensive logistical nightmare made up of a bazillion different types of poorly matched trucks that weren't even made of rust-resistant steel. Well, the USPS finally did the math, and they realized they could save an absolutely astonishing $5.7 billion. All they had to do was replace this sprawling fleet of freaks with one perfect, rust-resistant, purpose-built vehicle designed to last exactly 24 years. Moving on to Part 2, the Brutal Audition. Intense testing for a $1 billion contract. Okay, picture this test. It's 1985, and 3 final prototypes are facing off in this utterly absurd gauntlet. Step 1. The prototypes had to drive 11,520 miles strictly on gravel. To put that into perspective, that's the equivalent of driving all the way from Portland, Maine to the Sydney Opera House in Australia. Step 2, they had to do that exact same mileage all over again, but this time over cobblestones and potholes at a grueling, mind-numbing 14 miles per hour. And, emerging victorious from that crazy gauntlet, Grumman. Now, what's really fascinating here is that Grumman wasn't exactly known for making delivery vans. They were aerospace engineers. These are the guys famous for building fighter jets and the Apollo lunar module. Yet, they secured a massive $1.1 billion contract to build nearly 100,000 of these long-life vehicles, or LLVs, for under $12,000 a pop. Which brings us to Part 3, why it's mega busted and actively hostile toward human comfort. So what actually went wrong? I mean, on paper, the LLV was supposedly designed to perfectly fit anyone from 4'11" to 6'2", but in reality, drivers have almost zero room for their left leg. Because of the super weird layout, carriers frequently just bop their heads right on the cargo hold. Then there's the climate control, or, the complete lack of it. There's absolutely no air conditioning and terrible insulation. This leaves workers freezing during a Michigan winter and practically boiling out in an Arizona summer. Plus, the bumper is way too low, meaning it routinely gets stuck in the snow, and to top the whole shebang off, it doesn't even drive straight. And beyond that profound lack of human comfort, this wretched beast gets a stunningly terrible 8.2 miles per gallon. Guys, that's literally the fuel economy of a small tank. And because of how heavily it's used in constant stop-and-go traffic, it requires incredibly frequent transmission replacements. But honestly, the real kicker, like the absolute most baffling engineering decision, is this supposed safety feature. The reservoir for the wiper fluid was located directly over the engine control unit. Think about that for a second. You have a reservoir of liquid sitting right on top of the vehicle's electrical brain. This makes the LLV incredibly prone to leaking and inevitably short-circuiting. Yeah, because of that incredibly bold design choice, the LLV has caught fire approximately 407 times, which, as you can probably imagine, certainly keeps the truck warmer for those mail carriers without a heater, but usually only once. Part 4. A world without letters. The e-commerce paradigm shift. You have to remember the Grumman LLV was perfectly designed for a bygone era.
an era of lightweight envelopes and letters. But it is completely outmatched by today's reality, where everyone orders their groceries, giant bags of dog food, and heavy furniture online. The world completely changed around it, and the LLV just stayed exactly the same. And because it's a total relic of 1980s engineering, the LLV is missing literally every single modern safety feature we take for granted today. There are no airbags, no backup cameras, no collision detection, and zero blind spot warnings. The stark reality is that mail carriers commute to work in personal cars that are significantly more technologically advanced and way safer than the actual work trucks they drive all day. So let's look at Part 5, the next generation, retiring the wretched beast. Remember earlier when I said the LLV was designed for a highly specific lifespan? Well, the original master plan was for these long-life vehicles to last exactly 24 years. The very last one rolled off the assembly line back in 1994, which means the entire fleet was fully scheduled for retirement right around the time of the Obama administration in 2010. But as is so often the case, bureaucracy won again. Instead of killing off the LLV in 2010, the USPS bought 6 more years of time with a really expensive repair program. They forced these decades-old vehicles to keep living for 30-plus years out on the road, well past their expiration date. They're still here, and they're seriously struggling. Thankfully, though, we're finally seeing the rollout of its replacement, the NGDV, or Next Gen Delivery Vehicle. Now, critics have enthusiastically pointed out that it, well, looks like a loser. But hey, look at the bright side. It features adjustable cup holders, modern ergonomics, and crucially, it won't spontaneously combust. Only time will tell if it secretly has its own unique flaws, but it is undeniably a massive leap forward from the 80s tech. As we wrap up this explainer, the legacy of the Grumman LLV leaves us with this really fascinating, maybe even slightly terrifying final question. What happens when you build a vehicle to last forever and then actually force it to do so? It's a profound lesson in the limits of engineering and the ultimate ironies of government procurement. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive. Keep asking questions, keep learning, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.